All right. Buck Johnson, welcome to Country Drive.
Thanks for having me. Great
really
to be
happy,
here.
Yeah, really happy to have you here.
Yeah, man.
And a fellow Birminghamian.
That's right.
Is that
Birminghamian, I guess that's
Is that what we're called?
Well, in England, they would say Birmingham.
Most
Birmingham. I don't know how you do that.
Most people just say rednecks.
We put the emphasis on the ham. Birmingham.
The ham.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, man, no, it's great to have you here.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to meet you and fascinated by a lot of your work. So
Thanks,
look forward to talking to you about it.
Yeah. Excited.
How'd you get your start as a rock star?
Well, I don't consider myself a rock star. I'm merely a singer who plays and writes songs. But I'm surrounded by rock stars and I'm fortunate to be so. I started as a kid in Shady Grove, Alabama, which is, as you now know, is on the northwest side of Birmingham, going to Jasper in a way, near the coal mining camp towns. Mm-hmm. Anyway, singing gospel music with my family. My mom plays piano. She still plays every Sunday at church. And, my dad and his brothers had a Southern Gospel Quartet group, which was big, in the South. It's what Elvis wanted to be. They had the matching suits and the pompadour hair. And anyway, I started touring with them as a kid, and it was mostly on the weekends, the Saturday night singings, and then the Sunday all-day singing and dinner on the ground is what they would call them. It would be outside the dinner with the casseroles and the fried chicken, and then, you get all full and stuffed, and now go sing, And so I started with them singing like I was around 5, and, I just caught the fever. It was in my blood, and Mama says I was singing before I was walking. So, and I attribute to them, it was 24/7 in the house almost every day, playing music, singing. And, I'm so thankful that I got to grow up when I got to grow up because, we weren't allowed to stay inside. If we were staying inside, we're getting around the piano and learning a song. Otherwise, we were outside and drinking out of the water hose and whatever sport was in season, that's what we're playing outside, And anyway, I did that. And then by the time I got to junior high, I had some older cousins who turned me on to, there was no rock and roll in the house, not because they didn't like it, it's just they didn't know it. There was gospel and classical, which are amazing roots to have, musically speaking. And so my older cousins here, this is the Beatles, this is the Rolling Stones, this is Led Zeppelin, this is The Who. And they turned me on to these English bands mainly that were influenced by the very thing I grew up singing and playing, blues and gospel. And I took to it. It just, it was like another world. It's like all of a sudden Technicolor, And I can remember in my bedroom, I had a little, crappy little vinyl player, and I put Who's Next on in my headphones, and it was like I was transported to outer space. I was like, "What? You can do that? You can scream like that?" And then they got to Behind Blue Eyes, where it was this beautiful 3-part harmony, and it's like I'm sold because it kind of, it really made sense to me. But I was drawn to those English bands, and of course, you can't escape the great country music that came out in the 70s, the more blues influence, the real stuff that was in my bones. And I think that's where I just kind of embraced everything, and I think nowadays, just as in maybe in sports where I said, we played everything, kids now are specialized in one sport. I think more people are that way with music, and I'd like to see more people embrace. And I find today, there's all kinds of styles and bands that after all these years, how did I miss that? And that's what's great, about music is that there's always something new to discover.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with the next generation of musicians, what you were referencing earlier. Back in the day, you had time to develop a talent. Yeah. With social media nowadays, I wonder if kids are able to find that singular focus and really develop some kind of talent with so many distractions in the world.
I think there will be. I just think it's a lot less. I think that, I was reading this article the other day that, we've gotten so, I guess the society demands us to multitask, and our bodies, our brains are not built for that. It's not good for you. Your brain slows down. And if you could focus on being attentive for, instead of having all these other distractions with devices and social media, and you can learn to play a guitar. It's like all the guitar players I've ever worked with, no one had to force them to practice. They'd rather do that than anything else. Sit in their room and figure it out, And I encourage all young people who want to get into music. It's like, don't think of it as like, you got to be on American Idol. You got to be famous. You got to be known for it to be success. It's good for your soul, to learn to play a musical instrument or to sing with others, the instrument that comes from within, the voice. And when you sing with others in harmony, I think more people do that, it would change the world, because there's something spiritual about singing with others that you hear and you're listening. And when you can learn to sing harmony, I find more kids today don't know how to sing harmony, which is astounding to me. And that's all we did when I was a kid, is figure out, okay, so-and-so's not here, I'll switch parts, and that's gave me partly the reason why I have a career, because I'm a singer who plays, and in every situation I can adapt. I can be like the chameleon. I can go and and play with this band. I've played. I was in a country band, Whiskey Falls, and it was back in 2006 and 7, and we had 2 top 40 singles, and it was a harmony-driven group, and 2 guys from Alabama, me and Damon Johnson, who is now lead guitar player with Leonard Skinner, Damon and I, and 2 guys from California. So our sound was Hotel California meets Sweet Home Alabama. And you know what? It was a sound that I always believed in, that I think harmony singing is universal, and blues-based music is universal, and that, it would have gone further, but, timing. The economy crashed, and like for many people, things went away. And, and that's part of this business. That's why I don't always recommend it, to do it as a career. It's a calling, and I'm sorry I'm getting long-winded here.
No, you're not. I'm listening to you.
It's as they say, music chose me in a way. I had no choice.
That's
like I said, my parents were always playing and singing, and I took to it like water. Now, my brother didn't. My brother was in the military, is in security, and he took another path, but he still has music. He still can play bass and he can sing, and, a lot of my family, they don't do it for a career, but they all can sing. And every time we get together for Christmas, for a reunion, it's pulling out the guitars and we're all singing together.
Yeah.
And we all have different beliefs and different political sides, but it doesn't matter. We can all find common ground in a song. And that's a bonding thing. That's connecting. And I think that's why that could change the world, if more people could focus on that and not worry about, hey, you got to be famous or you're going to make a lot of money, because you're probably not. I'm, by the grace of God, I'm here today because of the encouragement from my parents and the support from them. But also, I worked my butt off for many, many years, and it was never a lot of years. It was with my wife in California. When we moved there, it was eating ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches,
Yeah. Music, the thing I love about music is that it can bring human connection closer.
Yeah.
When you go to a stadium and you see 80,000 people
exactly
singing along to whether it's Taylor Swift or the Rolling Stones.
Or Sweet Caroline.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everyone's from all different walks of life, but that music is the center that they're all coming to, and where all this other crap, politics, religion, everything is pushed to the side, and you have one thing to all enjoy together.
Well, I think all those things are creating more a divisive society. I think and people have something to gain out of that.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's what's good for humanity. I mean, if we all thought the same, what a boring world would that be?
I wish more people would understand that there's a lot of profit and division.
Yes, there is. And we have more in common than we are different, and we have to be able to find a common ground to be able to survive, just like in the tribal times of when the Native Americans, they shared everything.
Yeah.
Now, for them, they weren't about, if you didn't hunt and kill something, you didn't get to eat. Everybody ate. Everybody had shelter. What was most important to them was honor. How many feathers did you have in your cap? And that's what mattered. Yeah. And I think that's important. But Yeah. Anyway, I digress. So go ahead.
No, it's a beautiful part of our history and also a tainted part of our history. So I hate that we've lost a lot of that.
Yeah, they used to call when the white man came over to North America. And listen, if from the South, we all have a little bit of Indian blood, and I have Cherokee and Creek
Me too,
on both sides, and they said that the white man had what they called the disease of the mind, to want more than one person needs. It's like they didn't think that way. They shared everything. And I'm not saying that we have to live that kind of society. I'm just saying that there are too many people, like you say, divisiveness leads to profit for some. They want not just enough for themselves, but they want everything, and that's just, I think that is a sin.
Yeah, it definitely is. Let me ask something about Damon Johnson.
Yeah.
He's in Brother Kane, right?
Yes.
When I was a kid, I took guitar lessons from a guy named Kenny Bush at Nuntsy's.
Okay, I remember Nuntsy's. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
And he used to have Brother Kane posters on his wall, and I asked, who's Brother Kane? Because I was like, it's still in 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah.
And he said, I taught the guitar player.
Wow.
And so I've always wondered if that's Damon he's talking about.
Well, it could be. There was Dave Anderson, who's an incredible talent that was in Brother Kane, guitar player. And Dave now plays with Atlanta Rhythm Section. He lives in Huntsville.
Homesick.
And and there was another guy earlier on that was in the band. So it's hard to say. I don't know. Maybe it could be Damon. Damon, I think he's originally from Macon, but he grew up in Geraldine, Alabama.
Okay.
Which is in outside of, I guess, Fort Payne. So I don't know if he took lessons in Birmingham or not.
Well, since we're talking about Damon, I'll ask you, I love it when a songwriter has a huge hit.
Yeah.
And then does his own take of it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about Just Feel Better.
Yeah. Well, that song started off with me and Damon while we were touring with John Waite. And for those who don't know John Waite, he's famous for the song Missing You. Mm-hmm. Had a band called The Babies from England. And we were touring in early 2000s with Journey. And, we had an off night. Instead of going out, we decided to stay in the hotel room and let's try to write a song, and we knocked around a few ideas and Just Feel Better was one of those ideas. We kind of ran out of time. It was getting late, but we knew we had something, the seed of a great something. And so we called it a night. At the time, I lived in Los Angeles and he still lived in Birmingham. And this was before we had, everyone had fast speed internet and we could just communicate, via, FaceTime or whatever. So a month or two passed and a good friend of mine that I was also in a band with at one point in LA, this guy, Jamie Houston, who had become successful in all the Disney. He was a songwriter, producer with Disney, and he'd done all the High School Musical and Hannah Montana. And I played a lot of the keys on all those tracks. And, so I knew he had a lot going on and he had a connection to Clive Davis. And I called Damon up one day and I said, hey man, I think we got something here, but unless you come to LA or I come to Birmingham, I think the wise move here is let me take this to Jamie. I think he'd be the right third person on this. And with Damon's blessing, I went over to Jamie's house. We started writing the song. And as we were writing it, he heard different things. And that's the beauty of it. When you're writing a song, I never give up on what I think is a great idea. And as I always say, don't get in your own way. Don't edit yourself. Let the song take on a life where it wants to go. And that's kind of what happened. And as we're writing the song, I realized that, this song is deeper. This is almost spiritual. This song is about his wife who tragically died. Mm-hmm. And little did I know at the time she had suffered child abuse and all these other things and addictions, and she would do anything to just feel better. So for us, it was therapy. Yeah. And a lot of times songwriting sessions end up being that, we may talk for 2 hours and then for 30 minutes we write a song, but that's where the good stuff comes from. Yeah. So we finished the song mostly and then we tied it up and then we demoed it up and at the time it was Jamie was shopping me for a record deal and ends up it didn't work out, but we were really close. But we knew that song was a hit, so Jamie ends up getting it into Clive Davis's hands, and unbeknownst to me, Clive was looking for that kind of song for Carlos Santana. And so one thing led to another, and next thing you know, Steven Tyler's singing it. And it was the event of the year for his label, which was exciting. And I'm just thankful I get a cut of that significance. But I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And ended up being the first single internationally. Steven heard his voice and he couldn't do any promotion for the song, so it didn't release first in the States. However, the song was it was a blessing and all those things. And for many years, people kept encouraging me, hey, you should do your own version. You know, Damon did an acoustic version on one of his acoustic albums, which is a beautiful, he totally took a different take. And I think good songs can be done many different ways, you know. So I eventually, in the encouragement of my wife, I said, okay, I'm going to make an album. And, you know, I don't know. I've recorded a lot of songs over the years, and I could probably put out 10 albums right now, but I never released anything. So I decided to let me record this one and I'll put it on this record. And of course, you know, the encouragement of the people that I work with, Dead Horse Branding, and they said, no, this is your first single. I'm like, great, let's do it. Because I'm too close to it. You know, I need somebody
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that helps.
Exactly. Well, the song has been out now, and we've since released a second single, Who Do You Think You Are? But I interviewed with this guy from the BBC yesterday morning, BBC Newcastle, and it was supposed to be 8 a.m. because, you know, the time difference, but he called me at 7 a.m. And I was still waking up. I'm like, oh no, can you give me 10 minutes? I got to get some coffee in me. And, but he told me, yeah, it's number 77 on the charts over here. I'm like,
sweet.
wow, you know, who knew, you know?
That's amazing.
So, and I think for me, the song, my goals now in my life, I wanted to get the music out there, and I'm pretty realistic of my expectations, but really what I want is like to reach many people as I possibly could, for people who need that inspiration to reach out for help, you know, who are suffering.
Yeah.
And he said, the guy told me, he says, well, you know, we're this the week of, what's the word he used, for mental illness or whatever. Mental health awareness. Thank you. He said, this is a perfect interview for this. So I'm like, great. It's a beautiful thing. I love it when that happens.
It's a great song right now.
you.
We live, I love the Message in a Bottle video.
Yeah.
I think, did Rick do the video?
Rick did the video. Rick Caballo. I'm sorry. He did an amazing job. He had the idea for it. I'm like, yes, that's it. That's a beautiful thing. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I like the message a lot right now because we live in the time of this SSRI issue where everyone's looking for a quick fix.
Yeah.
Addiction is out of control.
Yeah.
I have my own personal experiences with that.
Sure.
And that message of just feel better. You know, the only beautiful thing about hopelessness to me is it's a painful moment, no matter how long it lasts, whether it's a minute, an hour, or weeks. Mm. But when you get on the other side of it and you find out you can survive it, it's really beautiful. Mm-hmm. But that message is so strong because it's sometimes you have to suffer through the pain to find the joy.
Yeah.
So don't numb that pain.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Hey, you know, there's that book called The Road Less Traveled, and the first line of the book says, life is hard.
Yeah.
And once you accept that, then you have a lot easier time dealing with those things. So things are going to not work out, you know, your way. We're all going to go through our trials and tribulations. As my mom would say, everyone's got their little red wagon to pull. And sometimes what mine's loaded with may seem heavier or may be less than yours, but it seems just as heavy to me.
Yeah.
What I'm going through.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, you're right. You know, the old cliche, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. So you can persevere through it. And I just think sometimes people just need that little like, hey, it's okay, man. It's okay to admit that I can't handle this and reach out for help.
Yeah. Since Steven Tyler helped you get a #1 international hit, I have to ask you, what is it like to be a member of Aerosmith?
Well, let me clarify that. I'm not a member. I play for Aerosmith, but they treat me like I'm a member, which is surreal and incredible. They've always had a guy on stage all these years that plays keys and sings with Steven. Singing with Steven is the #1 job. So on many levels, to get to play with a legendary band like that is, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me. I've been fortunate to have a career all these years. I've always managed to scrape out a living. I consider myself a blue collar musician, and unfortunately nowadays there's less of us doing that, you know. But again, I've really done my best to stay true to myself, and you know, hey, I'm not right for every situation, but Aerosmith, not only the prestige of being in a legendary band, musically, it's right in my wheelhouse. You know, I talked about those English bands that were influenced by, you know, Delta blues and gospel. Well, Aerosmith was too. You know, those one of those American bands. Their influences were the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin, and so, you know, singing with Steven, I get to sing with one of the greatest rock singers of all time, frontmen, and he's incredible. And by the way, he sings everything. There's no faking it. He'd just soon not do it if he has to do that. And now he had to go through a severe trauma injury. That's why we had to cancel the tour. And, you know, at his age, he's 76. I didn't know if, will he make it back? Well, he was determined. And so we were starting back up the tour, the Peace Out tour with the Black Crowes opening. I mean, incredible bill in this September. And that'll go through 40 dates, 40 cities, and will take us through March of next year. And who knows, we may continue. So I savor every moment. I've been with them for 10 years. And, you know, again, like I said, I'm a singer who plays. So the playing part of it is what I like to do. I like to know, you know, I think for my style of playing, you know, Ben Montench with the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was right up my alley. Mm-hmm. Simple parts, but essential parts. And sometimes you don't need me here. It's knowing when not to play, is thinking like a songwriter or a producer. So what does the song need? You know, I serve the song. So Aerosmith has those parts worked out, and they give me some liberties here and there. Like, you know, I have a Hammond B3 on stage and like, hey, take a solo here, you know. And that band, because we're not a slave to a track. Now we do, in all full disclosure, we do use tracks for songs like Don't Want to Miss a Thing because there's an orchestra we're playing with. But the real Aerosmith, the older stuff, you know, not the 90s hits, which are incredible. We love playing those songs, and many fans around the world love to hear those songs. But the older Aerosmith, you know, like Toys in the Attic, Rocks, that's the real Aerosmith in my book. And those songs, man, it's straight up rock and roll. And sometimes it's a freight train about to come off the rails around the turn, but somehow it doesn't. And that's exciting, you know. There's going to be some mistakes, but there's going to be some beautiful, incredible moments that every show is different because of that.
One of the best movie openings ever is Dazed and Confused.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet Emotion.
Sweet Emotion.
The way they start that movie with Sweet Emotion is perfect.
That song, you know, because those kind of guys, they don't always play it safe, and they take chances. That's how those songs come about. You know, Joe Perry, you know, of course, God rest his soul, Jeff Beck was one of his idols, and Jimmy Page. Yeah. And those guys weren't necessarily, well, especially Jimmy Page, not necessarily about proficiency. You know, I'd rather have a guy who is bringing something that's soul and emotion and not perfect than somebody who plays every note exactly the way it should be played, and it's sterile and uninspiring. And Joe goes for it, man. And because of that, he comes up with these riffs that are iconic, you know, Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion. And, you know, they listen to a lot of things. I think Joe was into the Meters at the time he wrote Walk This Way. Mm-hmm. So there's always that little bit of that funk element. You know, Joey Kramer was into Clyde Stubblefield and who played drums for James Brown. He's into that stuff. And so there's some funk element. It's rock and roll, but it's got a little soul to it, and that's the magic. So, yeah, I mean, those songs, it's incredible to get to play because it is, like I said, exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Relative to Walk This Way, since we talked about, you know, embracing all genres, shout out to Rick Rubin, because what a moment in music.
Yes.
When he puts together DMC with Aerosmith and helps to break down so many barriers. Yeah. And again, it's just another situation where people get this subtle message. All these lines are blurred. They can all exist in different areas, but what unites us
Yeah.
is the love for the music. And that was just a great moment.
It was, Aerosmith had done so many first time things. They were the first band to put an MP3 up online. They've done so many innovative things over the years that people aren't even aware of. That video, they're literally breaking the wall down between hip hop, rap, and rock and roll.
Absolutely.
And, MTV wasn't playing black artists.
That's right.
And that video changed everything. It changed music. I don't think they were thinking in those terms. I just thought, this will be fun. This will be cool. Like I said, they're taking risks, and they went for it. And, it's that song, I think probably, when was it? It was like maybe 80.
Late 80. Joey might be able to find it.
84, I thought.
Oh, no, I think it's
a little bit later.
A little later.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right. It's probably around 85, 86 maybe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But it was a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I just love it. And Rick Rubin's vision, with Johnny Cash, the ability to find these moments. You were talking about Tom Petty earlier. I think his band played on that album.
Yes,
they did. Under Rick.
Well, again, great players who don't necessarily play fancy parts, but the right parts, and that's the magic, that, when you're serving the song, you can reinvent a song. Who would think Johnny Cash would sing a 9 Inch Nails song?
Unreal.
Right?
And make it amazing.
And better in my book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that, it says 1986 for the people that are just listening, but is that Aerosmith's version? I mean, DMC's version? Or?
It's their, they call it Run DMC's version featuring Aerosmith because, that was, I think I can't say for sure if it was on their album, but.
Well, the cool thing about that moment, the cool thing about that moment is DMC had grown up rapping over that. They would just put it on the turntables, and they would just loop that intro.
Yeah.
So it was like a full circle moment for them to actually end up doing it with Aerosmith.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah.
And just to put a button on the whole Aerosmith thing, not to be argumentative, but I've heard Steven Tyler say in front of a stadium of people, "You make him sound good every night."
Oh, well.
So let me say that on your behalf.
Well, he's very generous and very sweet about that. Listen, that's one of the things that astounded me is that he would tell the front of house, make sure Buck's vocals as loud as mine. Because there are places where, like, I'm the one singing, "We're living on the edge." Of course, I'm doing it full voice because he's answering it. He can't sing both parts, right? So it needs to be up in the mix. But he also thought that you got good singers, backing vocals, and all of his records, he sang the backing vocals, and they were as loud. And he always hated the fact that you go hear bands and they treat backing vocals like they're back. You can barely hear them. It's like, no, they're good parts. They're great singers. Why don't you hear them? They're just as important as the guitars, maybe more so. Anyway, that was pretty amazing that he says those kind words. And again, man, I don't know what to say. I think that to get to sing with him, it's just it's a dream come true.
Well, we just passed Mother's Day, so congratulations on 10 years with him.
Thank you. Yeah.
What about the Hollywood Vampires?
Okay. Yeah. What about the Hollywood Vampires?
What is that experience like?
Again, a unique situation. And thanks to Joe Perry, Joe has me in 3 bands, Aerosmith, the Hollywood Vampires, and the Joe Perry Project that can never conflict. And so I'm really lucky in that way. So I wasn't in the first incarnation of that band, but I came in 2018, and we just did Europe last summer. I guess after a while, when you're working with these guys, they just become Steve, Joe, Johnny, and Alice. They're just human beings, but they have so many amazing stories to tell, and experience of how to do things and how to look, to how to present yourself, nothing, it seems off the cuff and like they just didn't think about it, but there's some thought put into it when they go do an interview, how they're dressed, what they're wearing, what they're going to say, how they're going to, work an interview. It's been invaluable lessons for me to pick up on. But the Hollywood Vampires, fun, easy, casual hang. There's no ego. Everyone checks their ego at the door. And Johnny, for everyone wants to know, yes, he's a really good guitar player. He has a vibe. He kind of goes for that Keith Richards kind of vibe. That's where he's from. But, he was in a band before he became an actor. He's from Kentucky originally, I think, and moved to Florida. And then, and like in high school, had a band, and they moved to LA, and he fell backwards into acting. But hey, what a ride it's been for him.
Yeah.
And but I think music was always his first love, and so he had the fortune enough to collaborate with Jeff Beck, and we featured and honored Jeff Beck during our show last summer. So Alice is amazing. I mean, a great front man. He just commands the stage, soft-spoken, humble, amazing stories. He traded his addiction, which was alcohol and drugs, many years ago. I don't know how many years now, maybe close to 30 or 40, for golf and shopping and rock and roll. And that's his routine.
Hey, is he a born-again Christian?
Yes.
Okay, because I've been seeing a lot of things about him that come up on Facebook with some of his quotes, and they're very beautiful. And I was wondering if someone was like making a joke out of it, but that's beautiful.
Him and his wife Cheryl are both Christians, and their parents were ministers. Now, I guess Alice has a different outlook on it. He's not from the South. They compartmentalize everything. Like his show is just that. It's just a show. He's playing a character.
Yeah.
And at the end of the show, he goes in playing the part, on keys, Buck Johnson on guitar, Johnny Depp, etc., Joe Perry, and playing the part of Alice Cooper. Music stops, spotlight hits him. Me, he is playing a role, and he's quirky in that way, man. He loves B-movie slasher films and things like that, but he and his wife, no matter if we're off on a Sunday, no matter where we are in the world, they'll find a church to go to.
Amen.
Yeah. That's pretty
Do you
awesome.
remember in Wayne's World when they talk to Alice backstage?
I'm not worthy. Yeah.
But he also goes into like some whole diatribe, and they're like, whoa, he's like really smart.
No. And I was about to say, all those guys, they're very smart.
Yeah.
They're very, very smart. And just because they don't say anything, they're listening and watching. And, that's the other thing I'd always tell anybody that's starting off in this business. Never assume that they're not paying attention, and it's your job to be ready, to be, I rehearse to rehearse. Before I even walk in the room with those guys, I've already got my stuff down, and be early. And they always say in our world, if you're on time, you're late.
Right.
And they can be late. They're the boss, they can stroll in whenever. But anyway, that's not something I look at myself as the privilege to do. So no, they're really smart guys, and really open-minded.
Yeah. Y'all have a great, maybe even better than the original, For People Who Died.
Oh yeah,
it's killer.
I'm glad you noticed that song. Yeah,
that song I've referenced so many movies today. Is a great scene in Basketball Diaries.
Yeah. Well, the guy who wrote the script wrote the song. He had a three-piece punk band. John Carroll. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. Escapes my memory off the top of my head. People Who Died. And he wrote the song about, because he grew up in a situation where, it was pretty rough, and there was a lot of drugs, hard drugs like heroin, and not everybody made it.
Yeah.
And so he wrote the song about those. And Johnny loved that song, and it's a perfect song for him to sing in the show.
Oh, yeah.
When I came into the band, he wasn't really singing anything. And we're like, man, you got to sing. 3/4 of our audience are these women there to see you, and for those who don't know, I don't know if you were going to ask this, but Hollywood Vampires it's the world's, as Alice would say, the world's biggest bar band, and we're the biggest cover band, tribute band. We're the biggest tribute band existing and we have original songs. So the last record we did was mostly original material, but Alice, the Hollywood Vampires was a drinking club in the early 70s that Alice had started, and with the likes of Keith Moon, Harry Nilsson, John Lennon. All these guys would get together at Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Boulevard and get hammered, just about every day. There's a plaque on the wall there at Rainbow Room that has Hollywood Vampires, President Alice Cooper, Vice President Keith Moon, Secretary Harry Nilsson, so forth. And so at first it started off to be a tribute album, the Hollywood Vampires, and we do, covers, with a different slant of all of his dead drunk friends. And there's an original song that Alice wrote called Dead Drunk Friends.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, a lot of these songs are tribute to those guys. When Johnny came, when I came into the tour in 2018, David Bowie had passed, and Alice was friends with everybody. Everybody loves Alice. And so we did, Heroes. It'd be perfect for Johnny. It fits his voice.
Yeah, it's a really cool, unique take on Heroes.
Yeah, thank you. It just so happens we were on tour that year, and as we were doing through the tour, we were recording this last album, Risen, and Arise. Excuse me. Edit that out. No. Anyway, we were in Berlin with a couple days off, and I'm like, hey man, we gotta record, Heroes. We'd have been playing it in the show, but we need to get a recording of it. It's hard to get all of us together. Johnny's got a movie schedule. Alice is always touring, and of course Aerosmith's busy. And hey, let's just go. We're in Berlin. Let's just go to the studio where Bowie recorded it, and that's what we did. And it was a great experience. And I'm glad that we recorded that song and People Who Died, which. I don't know how Johnny does it, man. He's like, he backphrases the crap of that song, but he manages to get every word in it because it's blazing fast, right?
For people that are listening and some advice you might have for them, what do those kind of gigs for you who also has your own solo career, what do they teach you or help you to grow as an artist when you kind of say, I need to be a part of this also to help my own career and learn?
Well, I don't think I planned it out that way. It just, when I was in LA, I had an original band, I had a publishing deal, and, we were going to be the next big thing, and that's what we were told. And, when that doesn't work out, then it's like, okay, you got to dust yourself off and pick yourself back up. And now what? And, I didn't want to be necessarily in just a cover band. I'd done that in Birmingham, and no offense. I mean, look, if you can earn $1 in this business, good on you, So I admire and respect anybody that's working and being a good person and being true to themselves. So I would say, if you get the opportunity to work with somebody, take it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. Because you will learn something, and you'll be out there. You'll meet other people. They'll get to know you and what you do. I was always working on my craft. I was always writing songs. Eventually I started getting into production, and I started producing because, hey, couldn't afford to have someone else do it, someone else to mix. So I better learn how to do it myself, be less beholden to someone else. So all these skill sets all kind of can work together.
Yeah.
Yes, when I'm out with Aerosmith, I have to be focused on what they're doing and what they need first. But then the ancillary stuff, I can also work it into my career and promoting whatever song I may have out at the time, building, it's all about relationships. I had met Marty Fredrickson years ago in Los Angeles because Marty co-wrote and produced Brother Kane with Damon.
Okay.
And Marty, I think Brother Kane opened up for Aerosmith on that first record, and John Kalodner, their Aerosmith's A&R, was like, love the first single, Got No Shame. I was like, who's the guy working with these guys? And so he got connected with Marty and got Marty to start writing with Joe and Steven. Marty wrote with Steven Jaded, co-produced a lot of their records with them. And so Marty knew me, knew what I did. We never worked together. But 20 years later, when Aerosmith's in Istanbul and they don't have a keyboard player and a guy to sing with Steven, and they may, Steven's not going to go on stage without somebody. Then Marty's like, Steven calls Marty, who do you know? And that was a relationship that, hey, I just stayed in my own lane, did my thing, man. I was being true to myself, and it seemed to work out,
Awesome.
So I think you got to be persistent.
Yeah.
Because it's the long game. Most of us are not getting rich, but, Like I said, it's a calling, and I just stuck with it. And because I had this encouragement and the support of my wife and family. So anyway, yeah.
What do you think is the best era of rock?
Oh, well, I'm going to go with the 70s. The 60s were kind of the groundbreaking, like there was no blueprint, and they weren't looking to become stars in the 60s. You had the Beatles, the Stones. They thought, well, this will be a hoot for a couple of years, and then we'll go back to finding real jobs, right? But they also, those English bands were influenced by American music that was coming through the ports of Liverpool, and they were hearing blues and early rock and roll, Chuck Berry and Elvis, and they took. That was exciting to them, and they were post World War II, so they had no future in their mind. They just thought this would be fun to do, but they wrote incredible songs because they were tenacious and worked their butts off. And I have to give it to the, maybe the late 60s, early 70s, because the 70s to me was album-oriented rock. You had, more of the Led Zeppelins, and, Aerosmith's best records to me are in the 70s, AC/DC. The list is a long list of influential rock and roll that people nowadays, I feel like, it's kind of duplicating it. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a watered-down version of something that was done before. What those guys were doing, nobody had done.
Yeah, the Stones went to Muscle Shoals because of the R&B they heard coming out of there.
Yeah, well, they were influenced by that, and Brown Sugar was recorded there, and
Wild Horses.
Wild Horses.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video, the Gimme Shelter video? It says a segment of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Gimme Shelter was the documentary about the Altamont concert. Is that all right, Altamont? Basically bookends Woodstock.
Is that the Hells Angels story? Yeah.
When someone got killed.
Yeah.
It ended like, the peace movement pretty much in some ways, some would say.
Leave it to the Hells Angels.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Who would hire the Hells Angels to be security? I mean, really? Anyway, that's a great documentary about that. And there's a segment, along the way of them. It shows them in Muscle Shoals going, and they're checking out of some Holiday Inn motel, and it's pretty crazy.
Have you seen the Muscle Shoals documentary?
Yes, I have.
That's great.
Yeah, I always tell people, I think where we grew up, Birmingham, that corridor between Birmingham, Muscle Shoals, and Memphis, there's something in the water.
Oh my God!
It's the gospel, it's the blues. All of the above. If you take Highway 78 from Birmingham, you got to go through Tupelo to get to Memphis.
Right.
And, for a long time there, it was a 2-lane road, Anyway, I think more blues-based music is the root of many great artists, and like the Rolling Stones and Aerosmith.
What do you think about the future of rock? Do you have any predictions for where it's going?
Man, I've quit trying to figure this out years ago. What my hope for rock and roll is that, rock music now, I mean, let me say this, and no disrespect to country music, because I love country music, but country took rock. The way I look at it, in the 90s, when grunge came in, and there's a lot of grunge music that I really love. I was there in LA when Smells Like Teen Spirit played the first time on MTV, and I knew immediately the makeup bands are going away, and here comes the flannel.
Yeah.
And this is serious. They're talking about serious. But I think your average Midwest Southern guys, 9-to-5 blue collar guys, they don't want to hear and sing along to a song about Jeremy Spoke in class today, although that's a great song and important. They just want something they can sing along with, like those bands like AC/DC, and also they could join in on, excuse me. And I think then you had the emergence of Garth Brooks and those artists who all of a sudden the country didn't used to be that way. They didn't put on like what was like a rock show that Garth Brooks was doing.
And Garth did.
And he's doing songs that people can sing along with. I Got Friends in Low Places, So I think that kind of changed, and then when Napster came on board in the late 90s, that ruined it for a lot of emerging artists, especially in rock and roll, because it seemed like hip hop was coming to be the dominant and the dominant genre, and it still is. along with country. Rock, active rock, is a very specific thing that personally I'm not a huge fan of. I think the way the records are recorded is everything's on the grid, everything's tuned, everything super compressed guitars, very sterile. I'm not saying that's a very generalized statement. There are many acts I do love, don't get me wrong. But I wish there was more rock groups that were like Tom Petty or like a Chris Stapleton that was rocking, you know, I want something that kicks my butt, you know, and nothing's kicking my butt right now, to be honest.
I have to say, in my opinion, it's not even kicking my butt that I'm looking for. There's something about an old Jimi Hendrix album, an old Aerosmith album, Led Zeppelin, that they were perfectly imperfect.
Right.
They had a feel. That you didn't have to go, like everything now with Pro Tools and AI music, it's all perfectly placed.
Exactly.
Perfect tempo. And the mistakes that you used to hear like in Muscle Shoals albums are what like made it beautiful because it was more of the feeling and you weren't looking for perfection.
And country better be careful because it's doing the same thing. I know last time I go out, it's like all those country artists are playing the tracks. And I'm like, that ain't the way it's supposed to be, man. It's got to viscerally move me. You know, Ray Charles used to say, hey, listen to this. Everything's perfectly done. What he says, yeah, but how does it make you feel?
Right.
You know, and that's the crux of it. And yes, the imperfections, you know, Native Americans, when they created their art, they left the imperfection because they said that what makes it human. That's makes the beauty come out, right?
Absolutely.
If you whittle something down too far, you're like, okay, I've gone too far. I've ruined it, right? So, and I think that's true in music. You know, just because we have the capability, we're using AI, and yes, we can tune everything, we can line it up, we can make it right, but it doesn't make it sound good, doesn't make you feel anything. Yeah. You know, too many people are editing with their eyes and not their ears.
I'm sure the AI robots will enjoy listening to it for its perfection, but we need to find our spot.
Yeah, I have hope for humanity, man. I'm optimistic. I'm not one of these that thinks that. I think you look over the time periods, centuries, you know, we've evolved and we'll continue to evolve as a society. And yes, there's always a danger. It's a fragile existence. One thing could change everything. You know, Mother Earth has existed disasters over the years. And if we're not careful, you know, Mother Earth will continue on.
Always,
you know,
without us.
Without us, you know, we're the kind of the scourge, you know. So we have to look out for each other. And, you know, and I think music is the thing that can save the world. Like we talked about before, was singing with others, learning instruments, not to get rich, not to get famous, just because it's healthy. I think there should be more music in schools. As much emphasis as we put on athletics, which I support, and I think it's great. Fortunately, my parents encouraged me to do athletics as I was doing music. I think you got to have that balance in your life. And so I just want to say, I do hope that, I think rock and roll, you know, metal will always have an audience because it's a specific genre. And I think it's kind of like, you know, active rock. I do think there are a lot of young rock bands out there doing it right now. And we don't know about them because it's hard to rise above the white noise of everything that's online. But I hope that they continue on. And I do think that somebody's going to come along, just as, you know, the Beatles did, just as Nirvana did, just as the band did. And it's going to shake things up. We don't know when. You can't predict those things.
Well, I was looking at Song Cypher, and they have some stats on rock. Last year, or from 22 to 23, I think it was, there was 58% more rock songs on the Billboard charts, and rock had grown to 19% of the market. So there's some level of comeback happening.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's all, it to me, like the music I love, it has a little bit of all that. Blues, rock, country, it's all in there. So, you know, yeah.
Well, you know, we have to give you a personal question so people can get some insight behind the music.
Yeah.
You were a Miami Dolphins fan for a long time?
Well, I was born in Miami because my dad was stationed down there in the Coast Guard during that whole missile crisis and everything. So I always kind of leaned towards the Dolphins. I'm a Titans fan now too, but you know, we had Dan Marino. Those years were special.
Could you have ever predicted when Saban, since you're also an Alabama fan, could you have ever predicted when he left the Dolphins what was going to become of our Tide?
No, man. I was so thankful that we got a good coach at the time. I thought, well, this could be good. I mean, listen, you're from Alabama. We didn't discuss this beforehand. You're from Alabama, you got to be Roll Tide or War Eagle. There's no in between. Right. It's like we don't trust anybody who says they root for both, right?
Right.
So I'm definitely Roll Tide, and you are?
Alabama.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we're good.
Born and raised.
Damon Johnson's a big War Eagle fan, but we survived that being in a band together.
Well, there's plenty of peace to be had among all of them.
Yes, like I said, it's okay. We don't all have to agree. We can get along. No, but, I didn't think he would last. Everyone's like, hey, he'll never like it, 2-3 years, and he'll leave again.
Has it not been so much fun?
It's been a lot of fun. I have confidence in DeBoer. I think he's a good guy, and he's won everywhere he's been. And we knew it was going to happen one day. So, we'll see.
It's here. It's here, and the days come, and now we just get to see what the future is. But he set us up for a great future, I hope.
Yeah, I think so.
So just briefly, because you've touched on some of these subjects already, but I always like to end with advice from someone with your stature and your accomplishments on the drive it takes to make it, and advice to others on how to find your lane and really give it your all and what it takes to find success in this world.
Yeah. Well, again, a lot of the things I said earlier are true. And I think it can be cliche to say that, it's a calling. You don't do this because you're looking to get rich. In fact, my college professor at Birmingham Southern said to us, the great Hugh Thomas, he said, children, if there's two things in life that you're passionate about, that you're talented at and you like to do, and music's one of them, do the other. Because I'm not really good at anything else, I don't think. This was always my calling. So I think that has to be part of it. Again, that doesn't mean you don't learn an instrument. You still can play, you still can sing, whether it's at church or a pickup band or in bars on the weekends, whatever it may be. But I think that you think it's going to be hard, it's going to be even more hard than you can even imagine to make it and just to earn a living. But, you need to build relationships. You need to not do it for your own sake, but because, hey, not what can I get out of it, but what can I help this guy with? If you're that kind of giving person, that goes a long way. And you never know when it'll, come back on you. Like the old biblical saying, cast your bread upon the water, right? It'll come back. And I found that to be true for me over the years. Foster those relationships. That's important. Be true to yourself. I know that's cliche, but man, you really got to find your thing that really you shine at, that is what you love to do, that people notice in you. And sometimes people do something because, hey, it's convenient, or it's like, this is a good opportunity, but it may not be the right thing for you. So those things, and again, you got to practice those. I don't think it's just 10,000 hours. I think it's more like 50,000 hours. You got to want it so bad that you're going to work your craft just as a professional athlete would do. No one's going to hand it to you. And if everybody could do it, then they would. So there's always someone else waiting in the wings to take your spot. Yeah. Rehearse to rehearse. I put in, when Aerosmith will start rehearsals in mid-August, I shut everything down for about 2 weeks. And every day, I already know these songs. But, they got an extensive catalog, we know that, and they can't play every hit song in a show. So there's probably about 75 songs I want to know, like, very well, because they may still need to work up to speed, those guys, and that's okay. But I'm not going to make them wait on me.
Yeah. Well, before we get out of here, let's throw up his website. You can get Just Feel Better through the website or on, I guess, all streaming.
Yeah, there's links to streaming to hear Just Feel Better. And also the second single, Who Do You Think You Are? There's videos for those on YouTube.
Yeah.
And the next single will be coming out the end of the month, a song called Living the Life that it's even, shows many sides of Buck Johnson. It has a little Beatle influence, I think, to it. And it's a fun song. Actually, I have to say, Living the Life, if I may say, I wrote that song during a time when it was a dark period when things weren't going right. And I showed up. I showed up to the right, and it was the right song that I needed that day. That, hey, I'm living the life, man. I'm grateful for what I have. And it's going to be a fun animated video that comes with it. So that comes out on the 31st of May. There'll be more singles. And then the album comes out in September 13th. The album will be called Tongue and Groove, which I have to tell you this really quick. Tongue and Groove is something, my dad passed away a couple years ago. And when I was a kid in Shady Grove and our old house, and there would be tornado warnings that, we all experienced living in the South. And I'm like 7 years old at the time. And he would say, hey, son, you don't need to worry. This house is built tongue and groove. It will stand any storm. And I didn't know what tongue and groove meant. That just sounded weird to me. But it always stayed with me over the years. And so after he passed away, I wrote the song called Tongue and Groove. And we all been through storms in our life. And, we all went through the pandemic. And some of us didn't make it out too well. But if you have a solid foundation in your life around you, and I'm blessed that I do, then you can withstand it. And so that's the name of the album.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, y'all can pick that up in September. And then also you're back on tour with Aerosmith starting September.
Yeah, mid-September. I don't know the exact date. But like I said, it's all U.S. There's 40 dates that'll go until March of next year.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if all goes well, there'll be more.
I need to go in October and see y'all here in Nashville.
You got to, man. You can't miss it. I'm telling you, not because I'm biased to it, but Steven Tyler is special. He's a great entertainer. And again, you're going to hear everything. It's him singing. He's hitting all those notes. He's a freak.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate you being here. It's been an honor talking to you, and
hey, it's a pleasure.
Wishing you all the success in the future.
Thank you so much.
All right, Buck. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.